Hi, everyone. We're going to begin now. Okay, so hi, I'm Sev Tripolis from Trumbull Neighborhood Partnership, and we are going to begin the Navigating Health Department as a farmers market food vendor from a presentation by Jody Gearhart. And the reason we're able to do this is through a farmers market promotional grant. And we thought it'd be really important to share with farmers, gardeners, vendors about the necessary licensing and rules.
Okay, and my name is Jody. I work for the Warren City Health District. I have a master's degree in public health, and I've been a registered environmental health specialist for about 3.5 years now. Most of my time has been spent in Millersburg, working for the Holmes County Health Department, but I've been with Warren City since November. Currently, I'm their only food service person, so I would be your go-to or your contact if you had any questions, and I'll have my contact information at the end of this presentation. Okay, so to start, I'm just going to get my little health inspector blurb in here real quick. I know health inspectors, a lot of people don't necessarily have a great relationship with them, but we do have a purpose. The number one cause of foodborne illness in the United States is a result of poor personal hygiene. And I put that in here because a lot of the stuff that you guys are going to be selling at farmers markets isn't necessarily, it's not meat, it's not milk, it's not cheese necessarily. It's not food products that you would always think that would cause illness to somebody. But it's not always the food that makes people sick when it comes to foodborne illness. It is how it is prepared, who is serving your food, are they washing their hands, things of that nature. So with that, the number one way to decrease foodborne illness is through consistent inspections from a regulatory body. So that's me. And then the flip side to that, aside from foodborne illness, is the allergy end of things. And this is going to come into play, especially when it comes to labeling. 32 million people in the United States have food allergies, and there are over 170 foods that have been reported to cause those reactions. You are not going to know who is coming to your stand to buy your cookies, whether or not they have an allergy to whatever the ingredient may be. There was a study done actually not too long ago, and they found that it was Asian restaurants and bakeries sold the most food products that triggered reactions, allergic reactions for people. And most of the time, the people selling the food were not made aware of the allergy ahead of time. So it really would come down to proper labeling, ingredients, sub-ingredients, allergens, to make sure that you are responsibly selling the food that you're producing. Okay, so the information I have today is specific to farmers markets. And I say that and I stress that because there are different rules for different areas that you choose to sell your food. Not necessarily produce, this is more of a cottage food thing, but everything that I'm going to mention during this presentation is specific to farmers markets. So by definition, a farmer's market is where producers congregate to offer fresh fruits and vegetables and other food items. This is not to be confused with a farm market where people individually sell food from their home. So different rules. This is farmers markets. Without needing licensure, you can sell unprocessed fruits or vegetables with the exception of mushrooms and sprouts, any cottage foods, tree syrup, sorghum, honey, apple syrup or apple butter, wine, as authorized under section 4303, 2010, and commercially prepackaged food that is not potentially hazardous. Okay, so here we have what are cottage foods, what can be sold at a farmer's market in addition to unprocessed fruits or vegetables that don't require a license. Anything on this list that says allowed is considered by the state of Ohio to be a cottage food. It does not require a license to sell at a farmer's market. This is the full list. There's really no exceptions. So if it is on this list, it is considered a cottage food. It can be sold at a farmer's market. A cottage food production is somebody who in their home produces food that is not potentially hazardous. They must be labeled properly. And a lot of people, at least I have seen, my last little bullet here talks about acidified foods, low acid canned foods, or potentially hazardous foods. So this does not include canning. If you're going to can, that requires a separate license from the state. I can get this list to you guys if you would like that. You can find it on the Department of Agriculture's website, but I'd be happy to email it to you as well. So now we'll talk about the labeling that's required on all of your cottage foods that you're going to sell at a farmer's market. Fruits and vegetables, a lot of the time, all you need to do is just label what the fruit or vegetable is. Obviously, there isn't going to be any type of ingredient list that goes along with your fresh, unprocessed fruits and vegetables. If you're going to be selling anything else, anything that is home produced, you need to meet these specifications as far as labeling is concerned. So you'll need a statement of identity. In this case, we have chocolate chip cookies, the net quantity of contents. So that it includes both the net weight and the international system. So customary and international. So that's where we have this 8 ounces, 227 grams. The ingredient list listed in descending order by predominance of weight. More important that isn't really listed here is to include sub-ingredients as well. So you can see anything here that's in parentheses, that is a sub-ingredient of, if we're looking at chocolate chips, anything in parentheses following chocolate chips is considered a sub-ingredient. Those also have to be listed on your ingredient list as well. Statement of responsibility is just the name and address where the product was made. And then this statement, this product is home produced somewhere on your label as well. Okay, so if you are not selling something that is considered a cottage food at a farmer's market, you will be required to attain a temporary food license from the health department in which you are selling the food in. So that's my first little bullet point there. You will not always be dealing with your home health department. You'll be dealing with the department in which you plan on setting up to sell the food. I have this allow ample time for the licensing entity to issue your license. Officially, the code says 10 days. You need to allow your health department 10 days notice to pull a temporary license from them. I have only seen that enforced once in the 3.5, 4 years that I've been doing this, but it can be enforced. So just keep that in mind. As a requirement of the state, this is what you will need to pull a temporary food license. This is the information you're going to need to relay to your health inspector at the time your license is issued. We are going to ask for all of the foods that you are offering for sale, and that list can be as long or as short as you want to make it. If you're pulling a temporary license, there really is not a whole lot of you really can go as big as you want with a temporary or as small as you want. Where the foods are purchased, so it must be considered an approved source. Approved sources are restaurants, grocery stores, basically any other facility that is inspected in some capacity by either the state or your local health department is considered an approved source. Questions we'll ask: if you're having hot foods, how are you going to keep them hot? 135 degrees or above. Cold food, how are we going to keep it cold? 41 degrees or below. In order to tell us what the temperature of your food is going to be, if you're serving hot or cold food, we'll need a thin probed thermometer. What are we going to use for hand washing? I've seen a lot of people just take like an igloo cooler, they fill it up with warm water, an igloo cooler that has one of the dispensers, fill it up with warm water, put some sort of like a catch basin or a basin underneath that cooler, and then they have just soap and paper towels off to the side on their table. And whenever they need to wash their hands, they basically just turn on that nozzle to that igloo cooler where there's a steady stream of water, and they can wash their hands that way. If not, you are allowed to use chemically treated like hand towels, but they have to be specific for food safety. They have to be specific to food operations. It can't be like Lysol wipes or Clorox wipes. They have to be specific to food safety. Next bullet point, how are you going to wash, rinse, and sanitize your utensils? And in addition to that, what type of sanitizer will you use to sanitize your utensils? Most people use bleach just because it's readily available. In addition to that, you're going to want some test strips for bleach. You can order them on Amazon. Basically, it just tells you the strength of your sanitizing solution. So we know what that is. It's going to be, 50 parts per million is what we're shooting for. But those test strips are really what tells you whether your sanitizer is within the proper parameters or not. Temporaries are allowed to use, very temporary setups. So for wash, rinse, sanitize, a lot of people will use just 3 buckets or 3 containers, as long as they're big enough to submerge the equipment that you have or the equipment that you need to wash. Those will be, more than acceptable. And they just set them up in a row. You wash in the first one, you rinse off in the second container, and that third one is specific to sanitizing. That's where you're going to have your bleach. And everything should be air dried after that. And then where will wastewater be disposed? This isn't as big of a deal in the city because there's city sewer and you can just kind of jump it down a storm drain. But if you are setting up anywhere where it's a little bit more rural and you don't have access to, something as easily accessible as like city sewer, that's another thing you're going to want to consider. Is you really don't want to be dumping out this, gray water or any water that you use for hand washing. You really don't want to just dump that out when you're done. You should find an appropriate place to get rid of that wastewater. So while you're set up, while you have your temporary, you will receive at least 1 inspection from your licensing entity during the time you're set up. We can issue a temporary license for up to 5 consecutive days. So if you are set up for 5 days, I would expect 1 inspection from your health inspector. Same thing, even if you were only setting up for 1 day or just a couple of hours, you would still get an inspection from your health inspector. When you come to the health department to pay for your temporary food license, they'll hand it to you at that time. Just make sure your license is displayed while you guys are set up. And then the last little kicker here for temporaries is that the food must be prepared on site unless you are bringing a pre-made product that was purchased from an approved source. So for this example, I'll use like macaroni salad that you can buy from a grocery store. That doesn't have to be prepared on site. Obviously, you bought it pre-made. You can set it up at your temporary, just make sure it stays within the correct temperature parameters. If you were going to make macaroni salad, we, your health inspector and we would be having a conversation, what is your setup going to look like if you have to make macaroni salad, outside or wherever you're going to be setting up. Just some things to think about there. And then, just a little continuation. Annually, we can only issue 10 temporary licenses per person per jurisdiction. So if you are setting up at the Warren Farmers Market and there are 13 farmers markets within the city of Warren, we can only issue you a temporary license for 10 of them. That does not include setting up Trumbull County, which is a different health department, that is a different jurisdiction. If you wanted to set up somewhere else in Trumbull County outside of Warren City, that is another 10 temporary licenses that you can be issued annually. We already talked about this a little bit. Temporary licenses cannot be issued for more than 5 consecutive days. The fees for temporary licenses will vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and they might change yearly depending on the cost methodology that is done for that year. The fee for Warren City for this year, it's $27 per day. And I put this in here as kind of like a weather clause. The state does not allow refunds for temporary licenses that are not used. So if you purchase, if you plan on setting up at anywhere at an event for 5 days and you get storms for 5 days and you can't set up during that time, the state does not allow us to issue any refunds for any temporaries that are not used. So separate from temporary licenses, I put this slide in here because a lot of people start out getting temporaries and then they want to expand to, you know, the next step. So a lot of people, that looks like a food truck or a food tent, some sort of a mobile unit, or even a retail food establishment or food service operation, which is a, you know, full-scale brick and mortar restaurant or grocery store. So we'll look at retail food establishments and food service operations. First, those are your restaurants, grocery stores. The license is issued by the health district where the establishment will be operating. The licenses are issued based on risk level, and they are subject to an annual or biannual inspection based on their risk level. And then what I see more commonly coming out of temporary licenses is people decide that this is going well and they like it, and they don't want to see the health department 10 times a year, so they get a mobile unit. These are issued by the health district in which the food truck or the food tent or the mobile unit resides. All food must be made on the truck. There is just an annual license fee. This year for the city of Warren, that's $159. Minimally, you get one inspection from your licensing entity, from your home health department, and the license allows for food sales anywhere in the state of Ohio. But with that, you're also subject to an inspection anywhere you set up by that jurisdiction's health department. And then just a couple other licenses that are offered by the Ohio Department of Agriculture. None of these are really overseen by your local health department. If this was something that you wanted to do or were interested in, you would want to reach out to the Ohio Department of Agriculture. I have their contact information in their email as the last little bullet point here. But your home bakery license, there's your cannery license, frozen food license, cold storage license. If you wanted to sell meat or eggs from that you raised at your house at a farmer's market, you would require a licensure from the Ohio Department of Agriculture. Either the Division of Food Safety or the Division of Meat Inspection, or potentially both, depending on what you're planning on doing with that. If you have any of these licenses already, but you're still selling items that are not Cottage Foods, if you're still selling items that are not on the allowed list of Cottage Foods, you'll still need a temporary license to sell those food products outside of your home. So what I have seen a lot, especially with home bakeries, is cheesecakes. And people have their home bakery license that they get from the Ohio Department of Agriculture. They are licensed. They are an approved source in the eyes of the state, but they are still selling a non-cottage food because it's cheesecake. It requires refrigeration. It subsequently would also require a temporary license to sell at a farmer's market. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
As far as the farmer's market, I know you had the list of what you could do, but where does maple syrup come into that? Is that a yes or a no?
Maple syrup is a cottage food, so maple syrup is a yes. You can sell maple syrup without needing a license at a farmer's market.
Okay.
And in addition, you can sell that. Cottage foods can be sold to grocery stores and restaurants as well. So if this is something you do and you have a pretty decent scale operation and you wanted to expand other than farmers markets, you can, approach a local grocery store and see if they would sell it as well. Cottage foods can also be sold to restaurants and grocery stores without any type of, inspection from the health department.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Would those things need a license then, those cottage foods, if you're selling them somewhere else?
Cottage? No, nope, they don't. Cottage Foods don't require any type of license.
Okay,
So the way that it was described to me is they get their inspection, your Cottage Foods, if you sold them at a grocery store, or your maple syrup, if you sold that at a grocery store, they would get inspected when that grocery store got inspected. So if you're selling your products at Sparkle, on Parkman Road, I'm just thinking of that because it's in Warren, and I happen to pick up a bag or a container of cookies, and it is properly labeled. It says this product is home produced. The ingredients are all listed there. Then that's great, fine, good, no questions asked, not an issue. I continue on with my inspection. If I'm at Sparkle on Parkman Road and I pick up a container of cookies and I don't see any label and there isn't any specifications, I don't know who made it, I don't know any of the ingredients, then I would be having a conversation with Sparkle to talk to them about, okay, where did we get these cookies from? Number one, you cannot sell them. And then number two, it would be worth me having a conversation with whoever made these cookies, because obviously they want to do the right thing, and seeing how we can kind of get that labeling end of things figured out. But no, if you're going to sell a cottage food to a grocery store, that still does not require any type of inspection.
okay. Now, for cottage foods, for like herbs or spices or things like that that are dried, are there certain things you can or can't do for cottage?
You can, I'm going to blow this up a little bit here. So I just had this conversation today that we just had a call with the state today. You can dry, and actually if you look at just like the very bottom here of this allowed list, it's talking
Okay.
about herbs, tea blends, soup mixes, things of that nature. As long as it is a very basic drying process, then yes, it is a cottage food. Same thing, label it appropriately and send it off. If you are using any type of mechanical method to drying the products, the state seems to think that involving a mechanical form of drying doesn't make it a cottage food anymore. So then it really comes down to your process. If you were just drying these without any type of mechanical help, then yes, it's considered a cottage food and it can be sold.
Okay, like putting it in your oven, just.
Yeah, honestly, I would say that is fine. Cause and enlighten me honestly, but what is a standard way that you would dry something that you would potentially sell? Is it to put it in your oven or to put it in like a dehydrator or?
Well, I know they have dehydrators. I just, instead of leaving it just hang and dry in the air, which it can be moist, it really doesn't dry them. I just put them very low temperature in the oven just to kind of take the humidity out and let the leaves dry.
Speed up the process a little bit. Yeah. And honestly, that would be fine. And realistically, I don't know how in depth somebody is going to get when they ask you, hey, how did you dry these?
Mm-hmm.
How did you dry these? But just, from a regulatory body to somebody asking me that question, officially, they should just be air dried.
Okay. And how about if they're not necessarily meant to be used for consumption, such as just for sachets and,
Yep,
those.
you can do whatever you want at that point.
Okay.
Yep. And another thing I should have put on this slide as well If you don't plan on selling anything, I know obviously you're setting up at a farmer's market to sell your food, but just this is part of the food code. If you don't have a price associated with anything that you're trying to give to people, that does not require a license at all, whether it's a cottage food or not. If you're giving food away, it does not require a license from the health department. If you are asking for donations, that does not require a license from the health department. Only if it is a totally free will donation, you can't post, suggested pricing, or we would like if you gave us $10 for this, cheesecake, or, whatever. If you are solely collecting donations for something, that does not require a license as well.
Okay.
What is the difference between popping corn and popcorn?
I know. I can read through this list, and I have, because I knew I was giving this presentation and I knew this question was going to come up. I can ask the same question. When you look, the second bullet point down is candy. Okay. And we know that fresh, unprocessed foods, fruits or vegetables can be sold as well. So you can sell a strawberry and you can sell candy, but if you go over to the not allowed list, I can't let somebody sell a candy covered strawberry. So there's a lot of, what's the difference? Why this, why that? And really the only answer I have, and I hate that I have to give it to you, is the state told me so. And somewhere, down the line, somebody with a lot of money did a lot of tests to determine what is considered a safe food, what is not considered a safe food, what shows, pathogenic growth, what doesn't. And this was the list that came about as a result of that.
Makes sense.
The popping corn is pre-popped. It's like what you would buy in the store. Like I can produce it. I could take it right off the cob as a popping corn.
Okay.
But the other popcorn it's popped and ready to eat.
Well, that helps. Or even, I'm looking at fry pies on their not allowed list. You can't sell a fry pie, but you can sell a regular, fruit pie. So
Yeah, it's got to be the chemical reactions.
something with how they make it, how it's prepared.
Okay, interesting.
Do you guys have other questions for me?
Where does hot peppers come into this?
Fresh hot
No.
peppers?
If you're canning hot peppers.
Okay, if you're canning, you need a cannery license from the Ohio Department of Agriculture.
All right, that's what I figured.
Yeah, yep, canning is, and it's big in the eyes of the state. Actually, I know there was just a lady not too long ago, local, who she wasn't in Warren City, but she was in a neighboring jurisdiction, and somehow the Ohio Department of Agriculture found out she was selling her products that were not produced in a Ohio Department of Agriculture inspected facility, and they made her, I think they made her throw it away. Like they didn't even make her take it home or anything like that. At that point, the state was involved, and the state was the person who embargoed all of her food because it was mislabeled essentially, and it wasn't produced in an ag inspected facility. So at that point, they considered it misbranded, and they made her get rid of it. So anything that's going to be canned, if you're going to sell it, you need to have that license from the Ohio Department of Agriculture.
Okay.
How about packaging? It seems like, you could use what, glass jars, or can you use what types of bags or containers or cellophane things if you're putting things in containers? Where is a good place to buy those, and how can you be sure that they are safe?
Food safe. Yeah, that's a good question. Your best bets, and I guess I can't say this is your best bet, but the place that I refer people to is GFS. Some type of food service store, a kitchen supplying store. even online, even, you know, Webstaurant is another, that's a website where a lot of people get their, you know, I'm just thinking like cutting boards and test strips, and it's just like a restaurant supply store. Any of those locations would have really anything that you're going to be looking for to package your products in. But there really isn't any stipulation, you know, there isn't a whole lot of regulation when it comes to what it has to be packaged in, just that it has to be packaged, which actually brings up another point. Your items that you're going to sell, if it's Cottage Foods, and you will use cookies as an example. If you're going to sell cookies at a farmer's market, they need to be packaged in your home before you get to the farmer's market. And that all comes back to labeling, and how are you going to properly, you know, label your items if you are selling them just, you know, as like under a glass case or something like that. If people just come up and say, oh, I want this chocolate chip cookie, you hand it to them. At that point, you have handling that's involved. As minimal as it is still considered handling, which would then require a temporary license.
Do you mean if a single cookie is packaged, that's considered handling?
No, nope.
Oh.
If it is packaged, as long as it is packaged, you are totally good to go. You're in the clear, packaged and labeled, you're all set. If you brought 20 cookies unpackaged to the farmer's market and we're handing them out to people who purchase them, that's when you get into the handling end of things. That's when you get into the labeling end of things. How are these cookies labeled if you're handing them to people as they purchase them? That is where it gets a little tricky. But as long as they are packaged and are sold in a package at the farmer's market, you're fine.
Okay.
Anything else? I'm going to click through to the end of this presentation here. This is my contact information, and you can call me and you can email me with any questions that you have, because I'm certain they will probably pop up here and there, and I'm happy to answer them whether you live in the city of Warren or not. I would encourage, if you're setting up anywhere outside of the city of Warren, talk to your health inspector. You know, really just talk to your health inspector, because hopefully they will be a wealth of knowledge and they will be able to guide you through any questions that you have. But I would be more than happy to be that person for you as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oops, go ahead.
I just said, thank you, Jody.
You're welcome. You're so welcome.
Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Jody, for being here and taking the time to do this and share your information with everybody. And I will send out the PowerPoint to everyone on the list. And if you want anything else, just email me. If you have any questions, I'm available also. And that's all we have for tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you, guys.
Thanks for being
Thanks.